begin to see miracles and more miracles and profound teaching and amazing sights that only God could have prepared. And the fevered climax of the crucifixion and then the resurrection and then Pentecost and then the real work began. And obviously they had no way of knowing that some people halfway across the world 2,000 years later would be wondering what on earth were they thinking when Jesus walked up to them. What was on their minds? I imagine it'd be the same thing that would be on my mind, like, who is this guy? And what is fishing for people? Could they have maybe sensed that his dream was larger than life? Could they maybe have seen a little bit of his vision for the future? I've told you before, these were just teenagers. They weren't educated. They weren't special. In fact, if anything, some of them were pretty broken. And we don't know if Jesus came and preached or if he had a reputation already, but they followed him. Maybe they could tell that something special was going to come. Can you imagine knowing something amazing is about to happen? And then it does, and you know that something even more amazing is just around the corner, and then that happens too. It's kind of like what the disciples felt like. In this account today in Matthew, Jesus hears of John's imprisonment. I can imagine he's hurt, he's furious, but he knows. He knows he can't do much about John, but he knows he has to do something. And he starts the ball rolling. He starts to gather the disciples, the Avengers, except for they're not going to fight a war, not with these kids. It wasn't a war anyway that they would wage. It was so much bigger. They unleashed the God of grace against a world that had gone completely mad by learning to love God and learning to love others. That's it. Growing in grace, sharing grace. Now, there are some very complex theological terms, but you don't need those. No one comes to church to hear what happens to the Jebusites. Bill might. We're busier than we've ever been before, and we're not just busy. We don't just have a full schedule. Now we can be busy on demand. Anytime we want, we can be busy. Now, don't get me wrong, I still like Netflix and video games, but at some point we're entertaining ourselves to death while the world descends back into madness. And society suffers from all kinds of ills. We could blame people. We could shout at people. We could tell people about what we see that isn't right. We could write about it. We could blog about it. We could put it on Facebook. We could write letters. Or we could get our people together. Our friends, our coworkers, those that we see every day, those that we run into throughout the day, we could gather them together and do something. So, story time. I have a book. I'm going to read you a story. There's a method to my madness, trust me. One chip of tile. Uncle Sam held it in his hand, studying it, his imagination turning like a kaleidoscope, and he put the piece in his pocket. I'm going to do something big, I heard him say. No one really knew what to think about Uncle Sam, the man who talked to himself as he hunted through garbage heaps. Things that no one wanted, he collected, a rainbow of broken teapots, plates, tiles, sparkling bottles. I collected jewels with him once along the railroad tracks. Sacks and sacks and sacks of them. My favorites were the tiles with the little blue flowers, and then the soda bottles with the girl in the bubbles, and last the tiles with the green horse. And for every bag of bits, he would give me a penny. Pennies buy a lot of candy. He worked in a tile factory, and he worked every day except for Sundays and holidays. But he worked on his creation every night, every Sunday, every holiday. And he took those bags of glass and he smashed them. Because in broken things, he saw what no one else noticed. He found hearts in the backs of old ice cream parlor chairs, flowers that had been in faucet handles, the sun in rusty gears. And there were people who couldn't see the hearts and flowers, and they wondered, what are you doing? Tower after tower arose, and now Uncle Sam was showing my children the triangles and the branches of trees. Triangles, he said, were the strongest shapes. He showed me and my children the beauty of a broken angel, a bowling ball, a boot. And the third tower rose up, and not long after that, Uncle Sam put away his tools and his jewels, and he stopped building. And he put on a suit, and he put his life savings inside, and he handed the deed to the land where he'd been building this creation, handed that to a friend of his, and no one ever saw him again. But I remember him, my Uncle Sam, my neighbor for 34 years, the dreamer, the man with big dreams. So, have any of you ever been to Watts, California? Oh, all of you. So Simon Rodia built what's called the Watts Towers. And people no longer call him foolish or crazy. It's a national landmark. A man full of gratitude for the country that invited him to dream without limits. The country that had given him the freedom to reach for the sky. And I want to show you what that looks like.
1, 2, 1, 2, 10, 12. Pressure gonna jump on you. I say pressure jump, oh pressure. I say pressure gonna jump on you. I say and when it drop, oh you gotta feel how much you was doing wrong. I say and when it drop, oh you gotta feel how much you was doing wrong.
One man built all of that by hand from pieces and parts that were trash that everyone else threw away. They're currently working to save it. Right now you can't go. If you wanted to, it's closed off. They're trying to restore it. And it should be finished this year if everything goes as planned. They're struggling to save what one man built. Now, don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. They have international drumming festivals there. It's a great place. But that was one man's dream. We're struggling to save the world. What God created. Jesus' big dream that all might know and love God. The future might sound bleak, and I know it does when I listen to the news, and some people might call you foolish for saying you're trying to save the world. They might tell you that you need to be saved from the world. And some people would capitalize on that fear, but that's not us. That's not what a resurrection people do. That's not what a Pentecost people do. We struggle to save the world, even though the status quo remains. Jesus' dream, his vision, is still something that we're called to fulfill. We're called to build the kingdom here. But we can only do that if we use our voice, if we use our hands and feet, and we use our values to stand up and make the world a better place. Because it won't happen unless we make it happen. And we already know what we need to do. Love God. We grow in our understanding of God, grow closer to God by putting in the work. Reading our Bible, praying. Sometimes it's a start, sometimes even a small one. It's still a start. The other half of loving God is loving others, learning to love others, putting in the work to have a healthy relationship, learning to think of others first, serving people with your hands. You don't wake up one day married with 4 kids, a mortgage, and 20 years into a career. You put in the work every day. And there are some people that want to be unlovable. But you still got to put in the work to grow in grace. And that's how we make Jesus' dream happen. We grow in grace. I thought it was funny. The name of that book was Dream Something Big. And some of you know, if you've ever come to me and said, oh, I've got an idea for a ministry or for a mission, where you get excited. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, the church should do this or y'all should do this. When someone comes to me and says, I have an idea that I want to do, one of the first things I tell them is dream big. Because if you dream big and you fall short, you might get further. I'll be honest, this in my head was a lot bigger. Had we not tried for big, it would look pretty pitiful. When I thought of this series, and then all these other things started popping up, and I started to see that there was going to be something big. And I hope you see it too. I hope it's like that day that Jesus shows up to 4 people who had no idea who he was, and they caught his vision, that something big was on the horizon. Last week, we just started dreaming, and I've seen people up here all week working on the church, and it's been fabulous. People are getting excited. People are putting in the work. But we got to stop limiting ourselves to just talking about Jesus or just hearing about Jesus or just listening to Jesus songs. We got to start living like Jesus. We got to start following Jesus because Jesus is going somewhere. He's leading us somewhere. You heard the scripture today. Something big is on the horizon. And Jesus calls us all still, come, follow me. And if we're not paying attention, if we're not being challenged, if we're not growing in grace, we're choosing to let the status quo be the status quo, and we're choosing the future that it holds instead of the future that God holds. We're choosing to be silent when our voice is needed most. We're choosing to let one go because after all, we have 99. And we choose to let another go. After all, we have 98. And another, 97. We're only following Jesus when we're committed to doing the things that Jesus did, meeting people where they're at, loving them just the way they are, and refusing to leave them behind. Let's start fishing for people again. The Bible sheets that I've used, I've even started working on mine again. They're in the back. I encourage you to take one. Read the stories. When you have questions, ask them. When you read the plants, or when you read the Bible, read it to one of these plants. We're going to give you one today. The plant might want to know what happened to the Jebusites. Just saying. And these plants, here in a minute, we're going to ask you to come forward, and you'll come and you'll take one of these, take it home. Every time you water it, pray. Or you can bring it to your neighbor and grow in grace that way. And that's always a good way to start a conversation. Hey, Bob, how's that plant doing that I gave you? I will say this has been a really fun series. And I know it's fun to see this stuff, but let's take this growth seriously. As fun as it is fun. But it's serious too. So as you're able, please come forward. Take a plant. There will be plants throughout the year that you can take to neighbors and friends. We'll not run out, I promise. The Green Thumb Group made sure of that. But come and take a plant today. Jesus was up to something big when he called the disciples. I might not be Jesus, but let's go see some big stuff, because we can keep going after Jesus' dream. Nothing's going to stop us except for ourselves. So let's go change the world, one person at a time. Amen.